I was happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and after I sat down and watched a little bit of tape, some highlights, looked at the stats, we're here to break down the Washington Commanders signing safety Will Harris, previously on the Saints and the Detroit Lions. We got to talk about his familiarity with the team, like some of the familiar faces that he'll know from his previous stops with the Saints and the Lions. We got to talk about how good he is. We got to talk about how he fits in this defense. Is he a Jeremy Chinn replacement upgrade even maybe? We're going to take a look at a lot of the advanced stats because they don't lie. Are we potentially bringing in more safety help? Maybe like all-pro Justin Simmons with their connection back in college together? Are we potentially looking to draft some guys? Maybe this is Tyler Owens this time to step up. We're going to take a look at Will Harris's cost, contract, all of that type of stuff. You already know we're going to do a full dive into everything. And before we get into everything, make sure you still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for supporting every video. Again, your one-stop shop for everything Commanders. I'm still working on that Javon Kinlaw video. I've just been backed up, super busy, haven't even really been home, but I promise y'all that video is on the way eventually. I have a whole lot of more videos that I want to dive into, as well as some potential free agency targets that we may be still looking at that are still available out there, so be on the lookout for that video as well. Without further ado, let's go and dive into this video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so what happened? Let's start from the very beginning. Well, apparently the Raiders agreed to terms with our former Commanders safety Jeremy Chinn on a 2-year deal worth $16 million, with over 75% of the deal fully guaranteed at signing. So the Commanders were like, all right, the Raiders want to sign our safety for 2 years for $16 million. We're going to go and sign a guy the very next day on a 2-year deal worth $8 million. It can get up to 10, but basically he's half the price of a Jeremy Chinn. Is he half the player? We're going to dive into that very soon. This may potentially be some really good value here. And technically, no contract, even no trade is technically official until tomorrow, Wednesday, March 12th at 12 p.m. So technically we've only agreed to terms with Will Harris on a 2-year deal that's at minimum $8 million, probably going to be like a $4 million per year cap hit type of thing. Just about nothing really to worry about. Nothing that's going to stop you if you're still looking at trying to get Trey Hendrickson. That's not going to stop you if you want to sign Cooper Kupp as a receiver. That's not going to stop you. This is a solid signing. Again, he's probably going to be somewhere around half the price of what Jeremy Chinn was. That's probably why they were willing to let him walk and go on to the Raiders. This deal can get up to $10 million, but cap hit wise, as far as what us fans are concerned about, it's probably only going to be like $4 million against the cap per year. And so shouts out to Mike Garafolo. He was the first person I saw report on it. He said the Commanders have agreed to terms with safety Will Harris on a 2-year $8 million deal with the max value of $10 million. The former 3rd round pick of the Lions heads to Washington after a season with the Saints. And I'm surprised, I'm not gonna lie, Adam Peters is out here handing out this many multi-year deals. I know it's only 2, but remember last year we were just handing out a bunch of 1s. And this year it's been more 2s and 3s everywhere, so this is pretty intriguing. Even Laramie Tunsil, who we just traded for, our like blockbuster trade, he has 2 years remaining on his contract. We signed Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner to 1-year deals Tressway as well, but it seems like everybody else, Javon Kinlaw, Will Harris, all of these other guys are being signed to 2-3-year deals. John Bates got a 3-year deal after 8 catches. I mean, I know why we signed him to 3 years and why we gave him what we gave him, because he's an elite blocker, but still, it's just crazy to hear that after an 8-catch season, a tight end got a 3-year deal. And again, I'm just surprised that, this is just a different offseason. Last year, we were only handing out like 2-3-year deals to guys like Dorrance Armstrong or Frankie Louvu and Tyler Biadasz, and Austin Eckler's deal was set up in a way that you can easily get out the 2nd year, but I'm pretty sure we'll keep him. Everybody else is getting 1-year deals out there. So this is pretty interesting. This is a change of pace for Adam Peters. Maybe this is the Brandon Sostin influence. We'll see. But either way, shouts out to Ref the District for pointing out the fact that Will Harris was the 81st pick overall by the Lions in 2019, which was 5 slots after the Redskins drafted Terry McLaurin. He spent last season in New Orleans, and he also picked off Baker Mayfield in 2023. He's also the one that got that interception on Carson Wentz when we played the Lions a few years ago. This guy has some picks on his resume. This guy's 6'1", 6'1", 206 pounds, and played collegiately at Boston College, which is the connection to Justin Simmons we're going to get to a little later, actually way later in the video, because we still got to talk about now, how good is Will Harris? That's, I mean, first and foremost. And as you can see on the screen right now with his relative athletic score, and this is way back before like Math Bomb, Kent Lee Platt, whatever his name is, however he does it, like this is, you know, when it's still the portrait version of it before we moved on to the landscape version, and I like the way it looks better. But either way, the main takeaway from this is that this guy is an elite athlete. A 9.64 relative athletic score out of 10 back in 2019. He was good in size. He has elite speed, good explosion, and great agility. We can work with that. That's a ball of clay that, hey, at the very least, we know this guy can move. He can move. And if you add him to the secondary that we already have with Quan Martin posting elite relative athletic score stats, same thing with Mike Sanverstill. Really, a lot of our defense are just freak athletes. And then it's just Joe Jr., Dan Quinn, and the rest of the coaching staff's job to put them in the best situations to utilize the athleticism to the best of their abilities as consistently as possible to be efficient with that athleticism rather than just running around fast nowhere. So also on top of that, he's 29 years old, not that old. He's a 6-year veteran, so he's coming with experience, but he still is at the age, especially safety wise, to where maybe there's some room for him to continue to get better. We may not have seen his best years yet. We'll see. That's just the glass half full view of it. That's just me being super optimistic. That's not me technically like projecting that. I'm just saying, you never know. Of course, he spent 5 years in Detroit, but he spent the last season with the Saints, and he had 13 starts for them last year. He played literally everywhere. We're going to dive into that. Shouts out to Commanders Wire for pointing out the fact that Harris brings plenty of experience to Washington. In 6 NFL seasons, he played 94 games with 54 starts. Last season with the Saints, Harris started 13 games, finishing with 74 tackles and 1 interception. Harris has 320 tackles for his career, including 7 for losses and 3 interceptions and 1.5 sacks. And I've already pointed out 2 of his 3 interceptions, 1 on Carson Wentz, 1 on Baker Mayfield. The Baker Mayfield was probably the most impressive one. But how about 2024 wise? Like, I'm giving y'all all of this background information and what he's done like the past few years, but what matters most is what have you done for me lately? Well, 2024 wise, you could argue he's coming off of his best season of his NFL career, so his trajectory is pointing up, which is a lot of the optimism that I'm gonna give you when I finally do the Javon Kinlaw video. My optimism is that he's coming off of his best year as well. He's still at the age to where maybe his best years are ahead of him, and those are the type of traits and trajectory that this coaching staff and front office is banking on. Same thing with Javon Kinlaw applies to Will Harris, because in 2024 he has 61 tackles, 3 pass breakups, 1 interception, only technically 2 touchdowns allowed depending on how you which stat area you look at, and a 61.86 coverage grade. Not bad at all. And then when you compare him to Jeremy Chinn, shouts out to D_right_1 on Twitter, because as you can see on the screen right now, of course you got to watch the tape, which I've done, but statistically, Will Harris easily had the better season over a Jeremy Chinn. Again, we're paying him half the money that Jeremy Chinn is getting from the Raiders. I'm not saying that literally he's the better player, but you could argue he's the better value just off of the fact that just last year, Will Harris allowed a completion percentage of 65.8 to Jeremy Chinn's 73.6. Will Harris wins that. Yards per completion, Will Harris 11.6 to Jeremy Chinn's 11.8. Will Harris very slightly wins that. Touchdowns allowed, D-Right1 has 0, but again, it just depends on where you're looking. At worst, he allowed 2, depending on which website you're referencing. And Jeremy Chinn, technically, a lot of websites you look at say that he allowed 7, and then they each had 1 interception. And then when it comes to passer rating allowed, Will Harris allowed a 79.4, whereas Jeremy Chinn allowed a 131.2. Will Harris dominated him in that stat, and he's at the very least the same, about even with Jeremy Chinn in the stat, or slightly better, or even way better, especially when it comes to passer rating allowed when targeted. Now maybe you could argue that, hey, Will Harris played behind maybe the better defensive line between the two, between the Saints defensive line and the Commanders defensive line. You can argue that Will Harris probably played behind the better, at least, front 4. Maybe not entirely like the front 7 when you include Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner, but front 4 wise. So then maybe you can say that Will Harris may have had things a little bit easier for him compared to what Jeremy Chinn had to deal with last year. But I'm not sure if it makes that much of a difference. And don't get me wrong, I love Jeremy Chinn. I was hoping that we bring him back. And for the money that he's getting with the Raiders, I would have given him that for sure. But at the same time, man, those stats are loud. And Will Harris at least shows me that, hey, he can at least hang with the Jeremy Chinn, because at the very least, statistically, especially when you're looking at a lot of the advanced stats, he's better than Jeremy Chinn. I'm not saying watching the tape, the eye test is not telling me that he's literally better than Jeremy Chinn, but I feel like getting paid half the money, maybe this is potentially better value, is my overarching point for generally the most of this video. And hey, man, I mean, one thing about Will Harris, man, if he don't do nothing else, that boy gonna pull up and hit people hard. Go look at his tape, or at the very least, go look at some highlights real quick. He loves to hit. And y'all already know that Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. were probably in love watching this tape. Like Tom and Jerry, hard eyes, tongue out the mouth watching this guy when they were looking at, okay, maybe potential free agents we can grab. When they got the Will Harris, they probably couldn't wait and were like, hey, Jeremy Chinn, we'll probably offer you this much. Take it or leave it, because when in doubt, we'll just go get Will Harris to replace you type of thing. I mean, he literally comes with the exact attitude that they want for this entire team to internalize and identify with, especially Joe Wood Jr. I mean, literally, Joe Wood Jr., all his press conferences, he kept preaching about, like, this team is gonna do things the way that, like, most people won't be comfortable with. Everybody will not like how we do things here. Well, it surely will be liked by Will Harris. Will Harris literally brings the exact mentality and attitude that Joe Wood Jr. is looking for in his defensive players. And that quality alone is one of the main reasons that Saints fans are actually talking about how much they'll miss him on Twitter right now. If you go on Twitter, Saints fans are constantly showing up highlights about him hitting people and things like that, and was basically saying, man, I wish we could have kept him for at least another year or two. So again, just like the Laramie Tunsil trade, if the opposing team's fans are sad about the departure of their player and the arrival of that player coming to the Commanders, whether it be via trade or free agency, whatever, then you know you're probably doing something right. Because like when Javon Kinlaw got signed, and again, I'm working on an entire video breaking down why he's underrated and why you should be excited about the potential of Javon Kinlaw in this defense. But 49ers fans, Jets fans were all like, ain't no way somebody just gave Javon Kinlaw that much money. But with Will Harris, Laramie Tunsil, and a few of these other moves that we've made, there are opposing teams fans that are like, man, I'm kind of sad to see this guy go, or especially Texas fans. They were sick about Laramie Tunsil. And now let's talk about how Harris will fit before I go on an even longer tangent, this off topic sorta. Well, first of all, shouts out to Nick Akers for pointing out the fact that he's really versatile, like used literally everywhere. And he also said that he's intrigued to see what their plan is for the secondary with Will Harris now involved. John Kahn pointed out the fact that Harris made a lot of sense. Spent 5 years with Detroit along with Lance Newmark at 6'2", basically like 210 pounds. Harris offers versatility playing safety, nickel, and outside corner in his career, and also technically a little bit of linebacker when you're taking a look at like his advanced stats, advanced snap count placements and things like that. Technically he plays some linebacker. We'll get to that soon. But speaking of Lance Newmark and his familiarity with Will Harris, also don't forget that Will Harris was with Marshawn Lattimore last year for like half a season, and technically only like a handful of games that they actually played together, because Marshawn Lattimore was only healthy for a few games before he got traded to us anyway, and then he was hurt with us as well. But at least there's some familiarity and maybe even some chemistry between Marshawn Lattimore and Will Harris right there. And Lattimore probably even put in a good word for Will Harris to Adam Peters and our coaching staff. But going back to Will Harris's versatility, to break it all the way down, this guy is screaming versatility. How about 352 snaps at free safety, 257 snaps at strong safety, 113 snaps at slot corner, and 112 snaps at linebacker? Like, that is absolutely insane. Shouts out to Pro Football Focus for those snap totals. That guy literally has played everywhere you can play except for the defensive line. I mean, and it sounds like the type of player that could be on the field no matter what you need at the moment. Like, due to maybe we still have a hole on the defense, especially in the secondary, or just as part of the rotation when somebody just needs a breather real quick. You know, you can just throw Will Harris out there wherever, honestly. But let's just say hypothetically that this team does view him as a potential starter. Shouts out to my boy Jamal Atlet Martelli, brings up a good point. He said, I wonder what that signing does for Quan in terms of alignment. I don't know if they are done at safety for now, but if Will has range, then we do think that he can at least fill that role as like the free safety. Maybe Quan Martin moves down the strong safety, but it doesn't even have to be Quan either. Hampton and McGee might see more time on the field as well. Dominic Hampton is a 5th round pick. He tried to make that transition from free safety to off-ball linebacker. It didn't work out too well. He barely played last year. The only time he technically played in a regular season game was the very last game of the season against the Dallas Cowboys, and it was like a single-digit amount of snaps on special teams only. Whereas Jordan McGee flashed a lot when he played. He was just constantly hurt. He was hurt throughout the offseason. Then he returned at some point in the regular season, flashed, got hurt again. Then he came back later in the regular season, flashed, got hurt again. If Jordan McGee can stay healthy, I truly believe that at the very least, this organization views him as our Bobby Wagner successor, and it'll be like it'll be Frankie Louvu and Jordan McGee as your future, like, two-headed monster at linebacker. But my point is, you can shuffle things up so much because Will Harris is just that versatile. I mean, right now, some people are probably projecting Quan Martin to maybe stay at free safety, and then Will Harris be your strong safety, especially since he has experience playing linebacker. This guy can play in and around the box, and basically he would be like a direct replacement to Jeremy Chinn. You leave Quan Martin at free safety. Even though I don't love Quan Martin's range, I would still hope we can find somebody with better range to play free safety, and then maybe ideally Quan Martin moves down the strong safety, which I feel like is his more natural position, where he can kind of play in the box. He can play a little bit of slot corner. I think that's where Quan Martin is at his best. Remember, 2024 was his first time making the full transition to free safety because we brought in Jeremy Chinn. I don't know, man. If you can let Will Harris be a part of the rotation, strong safety, free safety, wherever you need at any given moment, especially if you're running like nickel packages and things like that, and then you let Quan Martin move down to strong safety, and then you go acquire a free safety, I feel like that would be perfect. Because right now, I mean, outside of Quan Martin and Will Harris, you have Percy Butler, Derek Forrest, Tyler Owens, and Jeremy Reeves. And I mean, I guess outside of Percy Butler, all the rest of those guys are pretty much primarily special teams guys, but we're going to talk about Tyler Owens a little bit later. But shouts out to Saints reporter Jeff Nowak on the new Commanders safety Will Harris. He said, quote, Will came in last offseason and was not penciled in to be a part of the starting rotation. A minimum contract. He made himself into a starter. He's good in run support. I don't think he's at his best as a single high free safety, though, unquote. So, again, sounds like Quan Martin, strong safety. Even though, like, based off of that, you're probably thinking, okay, keep Quan Martin at free safety so that Will Harris can play strong safety. No, ideally, in my personal opinion, Quan Martin, go back to your best position at strong safety. Will Harris, you're just in and out of the rotation, free safety, strong safety, whatever we need. Like, you, as long as it's two-man high, maybe cover three, I love them back there. But again, to the Saints reporter's point, I don't really see him just being like a single high on an island by himself back there holding it down. I don't see that type of range in him. I don't necessarily see that range in Quan Martin as well, so I feel like we still need to look for that in free agency in the draft, which we're going to talk about soon. But shouts out to Walter Football because he gave this signing a B grade. He said Will Harris has been an inconsistent player throughout his career. He had one strong season with the Lions, but then went on to struggle. However, he's coming off of his best year previously with the Saints just in 2024. Again, we're taking a look at trajectories. If he's coming off of his best year, imagine what he could do under the coaching and leadership of a Dan Quinn, Joe Wood Jr., and what we already have established here. So it's nice that the Redskins are able to acquire him without overpaying for him. This is a decent signing where the Redskins are getting a quality depth player at virtually no risk. Again, he gave it a B, but at the same time, pay attention to the fact that he said quality depth player, not starter. So if we were to ask Walter Football, well, how do you feel about Will Harris if you had to think about him and view him through the lens as a starting safety? Would he lower his grade by a lot? Like, would he lower it down to a C or a D? I wonder. I mean, he gave compliments to him, but at the same time, it was a little by the fact that he said, yeah, he's this good as a quality depth backup, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. So now that begs the question, are the Commanders done at safety this offseason? And long story short, I highly doubt it. I wouldn't be surprised if we both sign another notable name as a free agent, veteran, and get a safety in the draft on days 1 or 2, you know, rounds 1, 2, or 3. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised about that at all, especially starting with the draft route. Now, you already know I'm going to throw my Georgia dog Malachi Starks hat in there. You know what I'm saying? Starting with him, who I feel like he's probably like a slightly less athletic Kyle Hamilton. Still a freak athlete, but maybe not to the level of a Kyle Hamilton, in my opinion, as a comp. And not only, you know, I love Kyle Hamilton because he's from the metro Atlanta area. Malachi Starks is from the state of Georgia as well. Born and raised, all of that. That's just what we do. We just breed freak athletes. That's just, you know, that's how we get down. And so then You know, maybe Malachi Starks, if some people view, you know, the safety position is devalued. There's probably a chance that he may actually make it to the 29th pick just off of the fact that maybe everybody's going to be fighting over this next guy. That boy, the super freak athlete, Nick Amonwari from South Carolina, man. And as you can see on the screen right now, I mean, there's nothing left to say. I mean, his relative athletic score, that perfect 10, ranked first out of 1,079 safeties drafted from 1987 to 2025, since relative athletic score has been tracking all of that. He went all the way back to 1987. Now, he emphasized specifically strong safety, but I think that guy with that freakish athleticism and based off of what I've seen on tape can also be a very rangy free safety, and I feel like a perfect complement to Quan Martin. Or worst case scenario, maybe Quan Martin can at least be like a solid free safety, and then Nick Amonwari can be an elite strong safety. Whatever you need him to do, that's the type of freak athlete that I may even be willing to trade up for, to be completely honest with you. I mean, you can see the size, elite. I mean, how do you run a 4.4 flat at 6'3", 220 pounds, and then a 43 vertical? This is arguably one of the best combine performances of all time, regardless of position, like of any player ever in NFL history. I mean, literally, if you look on the screen right now, this guy's combine results were pretty much literally DK Metcalf. Like, this guy's literally safety version of DK Metcalf as far as athletes go. It's insane. And then even NFL draft files, they said that Nick Amonwari is arguably the best combine athlete in NFL history. But how's the tape? It's also elite. 4 interceptions, 3 pass breakups as a safety, 0 touchdowns allowed the entire 2024 season on a South Carolina team that is not that good, going against elite SEC competition almost weekly. And NFL draft files finished by saying the best safety in the entire class. And that's crazy, because Malachi Starks, coming out of high school, we all viewed him as like, okay, he's going to be a top 10 pick going into the draft in like 3-4 years. Like, we just already knew junior year, done, out, top 10 pick. And then I feel like Malachi Starks, you know, his draft stock plummeted because, you know, with Georgia, you know, I guess you could say our equivalent to our standard is struggling the past couple of years. I feel like we had to play him out of his natural position. He had to play a lot more slot corner, where I feel like Malachi Starks, as a true rangy free safety, can be a Pro Bowl level player. But Nick Amonwari, whoo-wee, boy, hey, that ceiling is crazy. I'd be very happy with either one. But how about a free agent option as well? Because just in case the franchise doesn't view Will Harris as a starting safety, or even just, you know, making sure just like as a contingency plan, you know, Will Harris is a elite, at very least great backup. Let's make sure we have 2 starters above him on the depth chart so that we have a great safety rotation. Well, you have Justin Simmons talking about the Commanders, and he said, quote, very interesting when talking about the potential of playing with the Commanders. And also, I want to point out the fact that Justin Simmons did play with Will Harris back at Boston College together. So maybe Will Harris may try to go recruit Justin Simmons to come over here, man. I mean, he was on the Talking Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. He talked, and of course, he's an ex-Falcon most recently, but you remember he had his time with the Broncos for a long time. And he told them that the Eagles with Vic Fangio and Christian Parker on the defensive staff are high on his list as potential landing spots. But he also said that Washington and Dan Quinn are, quote, high on the priority list as well. So Justin Simmons potentially wants to pull up to the Commanders. Let's do it. I mean, shouts out to Jordan at Washington today. He brings up a good point. Justin Simmons has the Commanders high on his list, experienced and very talented player, and a tremendous locker room guy. Like, him and Dan Quinn would love each other. And Jordan also points out the fact that this would literally be like a typical Dan Quinn signing. Like, this just has Dan Quinn written all over it. But also, don't forget that Adam Peters is written all over this as well. Like, meanwhile, while Justin Simmons, just as recently as 2019 and 2021, 2022, and 2023, was a second-team All-Pro and a 2-time Pro Bowler in 2020 and 2023, and the NFL interceptions co-leader in 2022 as a safety, not a corner, a safety, tied in the NFL for the most interceptions in 2022. This guy has a deep connection with Adam Peters. And again, I just really want to emphasize the fact that when we're talking about second team All-Pro, we're talking about as recently as 2021 through 2023. Just 2 seasons ago, a second team All-Pro player. And for a safety, at 31 years old, that's not that old, especially if you get him on just like a 1-2 year deal. But again, I want to go back to really emphasize this connection to Adam Peters because it runs a little bit deeper than people think. Not only were he and Adam Peters in Denver together, but back in Denver where Adam Peters was the director of college scouting for the Denver Broncos, he was credited with being the guy that literally handpicked and drafted Justin Simmons to the Broncos in the 3rd round. I'm pretty sure Adam Peters is at the very least considering it. You have to be. So who knows? Maybe they're in the background right now, negotiation, contract, all of that type of stuff. We'll see. I'm hoping at least. And also, I was wondering if Will Harris may potentially even bring the Honey Badger with them from the Saints, with them playing together just this past season in New Orleans together in 2024. But Honey Badger just signed a deal literally while I was driving on the way home to record this video. I was getting my notes together and I literally saw Honey Badger will stay with the Saints on a new deal, like literally just like less than an hour ago. So Honey Badger's out of the market, but at least Justin Simmons is still an option out there. I mean, like I said, I'd probably go Justin Simmons and Nick Amawari if he somehow slides that far, but I doubt it. Maybe even Malachi Starks. I would take a combination of two. I'm not gonna lie. That's how serious I am about it, even though I would probably prioritize edge rusher more so with the 1st round pick right now, but we'll see. And then also, are there any unsung heroes that are currently on the roster? Well, you already know. I'm caping for my dog Tyler Owens to potentially be that one guy between Derek Forrest, Jeremy Reeves, and himself, Tyler Owens, to potentially step up as from being one of like a pure special teamer to a guy that may be able to be a part of the rotation for the safety group on defense. Y'all already know I've been hyping up Tyler Owens and screaming about him since this time last year before we even picked him up as an undrafted free agent. And yeah, he's still pretty raw. Well, at least from what we saw from him in very limited snaps during the preseason last year. But first of all, he was an immediate special teams menace. Let's not forget that, like a dominant special teams coverage guy that immediately required double teams on punt coverages and kickoff coverages. And he's also an alien. Like when we're talking about like there's athletic freaks, you know, that's Will Harris. When we're talking about alien, that's a level above that. That's Tyler Owens and Nick Amawari. We could potentially have the most athletic safety group in the entire NFL between Quan Martin, Tyler Owens, Will Harris, and if we could get our hands on Nick Amawari. But again, Tyler Owens, if you look on the screen right now, before there was Nick Amawari, there was Tyler Owens when it came to the combine. 4.35, and he felt like he should have ran even faster, even at 6'2", nearly 220 pounds. Elite explosion, elite agility. Stop playing with my boy, man. Come on. Like, we can't forget my boy Tyler Owens. And then he also even had some bright spots in the preseason snaps that he got. Now, granted, it was against other team backups, but still, he stood out, which is what you're supposed to do against backups, and he did just that. Shouts out to my boy Jamal Tell it for even providing some clips last year back in August of 2024, and he said with those clips, rookie safety Tyler Owens had some impressive reps Saturday night, and I remember this, including 3 plays within a 5-play stretch at one point during the game where he stood out 3 out of 5 plays and made the plays. He was downhill and run support. He had a chase down pursuit with some great effort. He had an easy shed for a backside tackle for loss, and then literally the last 2 plays were back to back. So go check out my boy Jamal at Let Maul Tell It, because he retweeted the tweet recently, just maybe an hour ago, and you can go see those clips yourself. But I'm scared to show them here because I don't know if YouTube will, take the video down. But you can go look at my boy Tyler Owens yourself and see, hey, there's some potential and some flashes there that maybe going into his 2nd year, having another full off season, maybe he can upgrade from being a dominant special teams player to a guy that could actually contribute on defense. And then now, before we get up out of here, just my last conclusions and closing thoughts and opinions, especially on Will Harris specifically. At the end of the day, I truly believe we are not done at safety. I mean, really defensive back in general. Like, go ahead and at least bring back Noah Benogany for cheap as like a depth player that can, rotate in as a slot corner or whatever, and still go find another quality outside corner in free agency and maybe even in the draft. And then the same thing with safety. In my opinion, after watching some of Will Harris's tape, if he's your backup, to me, you have an elite, at least great defensive back rotation, safety at least. But if he's your starter, you may need to worry just a little bit. He's solid, but I feel like him as a backup is elite. Same thing with kind of like Nick Allegretti, where if he's your starter, you're straight, you're solid, but I prefer Nick Allegretti as a backup because that means that you have a really talented offensive line starting over him. And I think he's arguably, you could say, like a better version of a safety than Noah Igbenogany is as a corner. And that's coming from somebody who feels like Noah Igbenogany is very underrated, especially amongst this fan base. I feel like Will Harris is a better safety than Noah Igbenogany is a corner. So I feel like this is a very solid signing. Is he a direct replacement to Jeremy Chinn? I'm not exactly sure. We'll see. I would still go and look for upgrades in the offseason, again, for agency and draft, but that's just me. But I like Will Harris. If for any, say, worst case scenario, he's one of our starting safeties going into this 2025 season, which I highly doubt. But if he is, I still think we'll be okay, especially if we can improve this defensive line to the point that we can get after the quarterback consistently. Like if you trade for Trey Hendrickson, whatever you got to do to beef up this defensive line for us to be able to set the edge, stop the run to where we don't have to allocate as many resources and players to stack in the box and stopping the run, and we can really focus our resources on coverage, I think Will Harris will be just fine in an environment like that and play very well. Just like, again, he's coming off of his best season of his career, as most recently as last season. I think his trajectory is pointing up. I think he's only going to get better. We'll see. And then you have Dean Jones of Rico's Rag. He wrote an article saying Commanders secure a cost-effective replacement for shocking free agent departure. And in that article, he basically said, Commanders act with conviction to secure Jeremy Chinn contingency plan. Washington wasn't on the back foot for long. Peters had a successor in mind to go alongside Quan Martin, reportedly signing Will Harris to a 2-year, $8 million deal that can rise up to $10 million with incentives. Harris is a 6-year NFL veteran who spent last season with New Orleans after 5 campaigns with the Detroit Lions. He's cut from a similar cloth as Chinn, both boasting the versatility to play either safety spots and even help out at the defensive second level when required, basically like in the box and like where the linebackers are. Like Chinn, the former third-round pick out in the 2019 NFL draft struggles in coverage on occasion. Harris is much better when he's allowed to be instinctive. In that sense, he's a ready-made replacement for the recent departure of Jeremy Chinn. This shouldn't prevent them from adding another prolific safety to the ranks at some stage, I agree. The Commanders might want to see more of what they have in-house. At the same time, Peters cannot leave anything to chance in his quest to get Washington among the playoff challenges for a second straight year. After 2 notable splashes to fortify the trenches with Javon Kinlaw and Laramie Tunsil, basically, this is the sort of signing Commanders fans should expect moving forward. Once the initial marquee names came off the table, that's where value can be had. And with Washington being an attractive destination again after decades of languishing and disgrace, Peters would be wise to seize this opportunity with both hands. And basically, they're projecting that we're probably going to get a lot more depth and solid signings, guys with great value like this, where maybe they're a starter, but at the very least, they're a really good depth player, and you're getting them for very cheap so that we can still have enough cap space to potentially make bigger moves if we want to, like again, maybe signing a Cooper Kupp, maybe trading for a Trey Hendrickson. We'll see. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Please still farm that like button, still farm the subscription button, still farm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. And make sure you please stay tuned with everything Commanders. Again, your one-stop shop for everything burgundy and gold. Please make sure you leave a like on the way out. And of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in the video. How do you feel about Will Harris? Do you feel like he's even a better version of Jeremy Chinn? Or even if he's not, do you feel like on a per dollar value, do you feel like he's better value than Jeremy Chinn, with Jeremy Chinn making almost double the money that he's making here? Let me know how you feel about potential, like his fit with the defense. Do you feel like he's more of a strong safety, free safety? Where would you put Quan Martin if Will Harris had to start? Would you put Quan Martin at free safety, a strong safety? Will Harris a strong safety, free safety? Do you want him as a starter? Do you want to go and get like a Justin Simmons in free agency? Do you want to draft Nick Amawari or Malachi Starks in the draft? How do you feel about this entire safety situation right now after we just added Will Harris for a 2-year, $8 million deal at least? Probably only like a $4 million cap hit per season. Nothing crazy that stops you from making any moves. And speaking of any more moves, do you see the Commanders still potentially going after like a trade for Trey Hendrickson? Because he's not staying on the Bengals, and we're probably just playing the long game to see if we could get the Bengals to lower their draft pick, whatever they want in compensation, whatever. But either way, let me know all of that in the comment section. I'm gonna try my best to read and reply to as many things as possible. Make sure you leave a like on the way out. I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later with more videos today. I'm probably gonna do like 2 more videos today. I'm trying to get that Javon Kinlaw video out tonight. Catch y'all later. I'm out.